Whoa, 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 whoa. Catchy tune, huh?
It's not too bad.
All right. So, hi, everybody. I'm Frank. He's Aaron. This is Leaf Talk. We have a fair bit to talk about. I'll point you all in a direction to check the flying elbow thrown to Wall in game two. So, the Florida Panthers are 2 for 2 for aiming elbows at Leaf goaltenders per game. So they're on an average of one per game that we have video evidence of. Um, well, Aaron, there's some things that obviously you have ready here to. I'll tell you what. Why don't we start with some of your stuff? There's some stuff I want to talk about too. We'll see. We'll
Okay.
start with you. Marner scores tiebreaker as the Leafs beat the Panthers. Mar was a crazy goal.
You know, this goes back to that old hockey maxim of just get it on net. Marner gets the point, gets the puck up back by the point, keeps it from going out, throws it at the net, and it beats Bobrovsky. That was the tie-breaking goal in the third period. Uh, you know, uh, he became a father for the first time over the weekend. Uh, had his birthday earlier in the week. Joseph Woll on the other side of it also had 25 saves in place of the injured Anthony Stolarz. That's a 2-0 series lead now, which the Leafs haven't been in a position to have since 1987. So that would have been 12 years after I was born. Woll's now got a 950 save percentage in his 4 previous playoff starts. He's performed well in 2023 and 2024. He's now got a 4-2 record when it comes to the playoffs. This was a game of back and forths and quick responses by the Maple Leafs. That I think
Absolutely.
is what I was happiest to see was the quick response that they gave to Florida, either equalizing or taking the lead.
A little caveat of information: what Edmonton accomplished in their 2 wins is the first time they've done that since 1988.
Interesting. Well, then again, that's a lot of come from behind wins, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about the 2 wins on. I think it's about the. I'm not sure. I think it's the 2 wins on the road, winning 2 games on the road that they've done that they haven't done in a long time. Yeah, well, the Leafs, as far as I'm concerned, have been dedicated to be contained. Would be what I'd want to say, but I think I've seen for what happened with the Leafs and their goaltender. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to upset such people as yourself or other Leaf fans, but it's almost like the Stolarz incident put money in the bank for the Maple Leafs, where the league knows they've made a mistake, and they can't help it. No, like if they don't know they made a mistake, when a goaltender is hit by a player that they didn't penalize, misses 2 games, doesn't go on the road trip for the 3 and 4. They're not looking good on this, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So this is something that I think is going to change this summer. There's going to be, I believe, Aaron, there's going to be a review of officiating. I believe the rest of the leagues, the professional leagues, I'm not saying the NHL isn't, but what they aren't is professional in the sense that they respect the gamblers that gamble on their games. Because if there's any reason to think, it doesn't matter why they miss a penalty that's egregious. It only sticks in the craw of gamblers. It'll stick in the craw of a group that bets for Edmonton one day, for Toronto another day, for Florida another day, for Vegas another day. See, all those things that are going on, these egregious penalties that are being missed, are creating a situation where maybe, just possibly, maybe, I say this in total seriousness, the officiating, there's not enough pressure on the referees to be accountable, which seems like a good idea for the referees. Problem is, the NHL, in keeping the referees happy, are creating a problem that's bigger than the referees, and it's bigger than the NHL. It's about gambling, and it's about the impression of you know that you can trust the games as they're being played. This is the next worst thing, and I mean this seriously. It is the next worst thing to finding out you got a crooked official, because just because it's accidental doesn't change that they're doing it. They're doing it, doesn't matter why. It's the result that matters, and that is doubt in the way the games are being officiated. Gamblers are going to be suspicious. Why wouldn't they be? And so what's going to happen this summer, I'm predicting this, is there's going to be a whole rehaul of officiating, and the way it's done and how it will be accessible. In other words, constructive criticism will be able to be addressed by the media, and the NHL and the referees are going to have to come clean with stuff that happens. They're going to have to say they don't like the idea. The officials, the NHL, they have this common bond. We made a mistake on the Stallers call. We should have called a penalty. We should have Vegas. A can opener was used by an Edmonton Oiler. The can opener now has probably taken a player out a minimum of one game. My point is, when players are injured illegally, and then not even a penalty is called, never mind the suspension, that the chickens have left the roost, the horses have left the barn, and now it's over. The National Hockey League's credibility is exactly zero. And whether it's not about you being a Leaf fan, Aaron, and not being happy, it's about the cumulative effect of all the bad penalties that have affected a lot of the teams. And we're only in the second series. And we have memorable misses. These are misses people are going to talk about for a while. At least fans will. Anyway.
And that's the thing, right? It sticks with you. And it's a taint that you can't get rid of.
It's a stink.
Yeah. And it affects everything. And you know, as much as the NHL likes to pretend that these sorts of things don't happen and that their officials are blameless, when you look at everything that's gone on with regards to this, and the number of calls that are missed and the amount of money that they are potentially losing because of the way that games are officiated, the NHL is going to have to tighten up at some point.
You don't think that some of these gambling companies don't have a line to Bettman and have said, you know, dude, my bettors are not happy?
I'd like to think that they do, but at the end of the day, you know, like
look,
it's really frustrating. You know what I mean?
Aaron, it's frustrating, and I'll help you elucidate. The reason it's so frustrating, Aaron, for people like yourself and even people like me, and I think for most people, once they begin to realize, I think, is that the National Hockey League historically has sat on problems, stuck their head in the sand, pretended sexism didn't happen in hockey, that abuse didn't happen in hockey. It took it to explode and become a giant legal issue that they finally addressed the problem. The same thing I just said. The horses have left the barn. The cows are gone. You know, that's when because of the stubborn nature of Gary Bettman, and he is stubborn. He was a bully at the beginning, and I think he still is. His way or the highway doesn't work all the time. At some point, he has to take input from what's going on around him. And the National Hockey League under Bettman's leadership has had problems with racism, has had problems with sexism, and has had problems with abuse. Not because somebody broke a big secret. It wasn't, none of them were secrets. They came out into the open, and after they came out, then Bettman decided, and the National Hockey League decided we got to do inclusive hockey. We have to incorporate women in the National Hockey League. We have to be gentler with our players. BS, total BS.
And again, that's why it's so frustrating. You know, it just, at the end of the day, this is a problem that needs to get fixed, and needs to get fixed soon.
Immediately.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can do it during the playoff. Well, they kind of can in a way, Aaron. You know, they promised that they would protect goaltenders. One thing's for sure, they've got to protect the goaltenders. Because if another goaltender goes down because of player, never mind straddling the line, right? Because that's just a way of saying, oh well, he got away with it this time. When they cross the line and something bad happens, the National Hockey League is now, they cannot claim ignorance any longer. They know that they are not applying the rules in a way that keeps goaltenders safe. That's a known fact right now. Now it's just a question of, okay, how much better are we going to realize that? That's all that they're in now. It's just, how bad is it?
Yeah, and this is again the issue that we're running up against here is, and there's no earthly way to satisfy everybody when it comes to this sort of thing, unless they start holding executions on the ice for players that touch goaltenders. It's not going to change. Speaking of missed and interesting calls, the embellishment call on Rodriguez in the Oilers and Golden Knights game was something.
I'm saying, Aaron, that's what I mean by money in the bank. The Leafs have money in the bank because of what happened to Stolarz. The league is very cognizant of the fact that, all right, we really screwed up here. Now we got to be careful. We can't treat Toronto like we always have, because unfortunately we went too far one time and now the jig is up. And even Hockey Night in Canada showed that Bennett did it before the last time they played. So this is not something that the Leafs are uniquely, had this unique opportunity came for them to lose a goaltender. No, this is a repeat offender. And repeat referees, the same referees were calling the game, where they ignored a clear penalty. And they, whether you're a Leaf fan or not, that's not my point, because I'm going to go to McNabb and Vegas, where that guy is probably not playing the next game because he has a severe problem because of a can opener by the boards with a nice little push by Arvidsson. So, I'm not here to take sides with the Leafs. I know it sounds like it, but the only reason we talk about the Leafs, and I notice what's going on with the Leafs, because we do this show, I watch the games and I make sure I watch them. The other games, if I have time to watch them in decelerating importance, I watch the Canadian teams first. So, so I happened to watch that game with Edmonton. And it's bad. The officiating is terrible. It's terrible. They're not missing subtle shit. They're missing the big stuff. Anyway, I'm going to stop insulting referees. You can have the final word in that regard.
I was just going to say, at the end of the day, it shouldn't take players getting injured for the league to protect its employees. That's what it boils down to.
I am biting my tongue. So move on to the next item. We'll move on to the next item. We're kind of hitting it again. Sorry, Stolar's unable to travel to Florida, so he probably, one of the things that happens with concussions. I don't know if everybody's aware. You can't get into an airplane.
Yep. That's it, and it has something to do with the potential for changes in atmospheric pressure to negatively affect, what's going on in your head. In cases like this, it's a head injury. You got to be careful with it. In the same sort of way that one of the Maple Leafs got sidelined for an extended period of time because he flew to Europe. Almost ended his career. At this point, we do know that games 3 and 4 won't be split between Woll and Stolarz. According to dailyfaceoff.com, it does appear that Murray was going with the team to be the backup. This is information that we had as at this morning. So now Hakanpää is on IR. David Kampf is day-to-day. Anthony Stolarz has been ruled out. Joseph Woll and Matt Murray are the designated individuals. This morning, Joseph was the one in the starters net. So it looks like he'll be doing that. The Leafs are going to be pairing McCabe and Tanev, Riley and Carlo, and Benoit and OEL. And up front, they're keeping Pacioretty with Tavares and Nylander.
Of course.
They're keeping Lorentz with Lawton and Yarncrook,
Yep.
and they're keeping McMahon with Domi and Holmberg.
He-
Speaking of another individual who seemed unjustly targeted, it almost seemed like it was Wakapontas Day on
he sure did.
Wednesday as
But
well.
I think his kind of play frustrates opponents because he's on like white on rice.
Oh, guaranteed. He likes to play players very, very close, and that's not always.
I don't know that he's dirty. I don't think that's the.
No.
Appear to be dirty, but he's very aggressive physically when it comes to being on top of you. He's a good skater. He's a robot. He reminds me of Ron Ellis. Just sees something in his sights and he goes, "Well, I'm going to go there. I'm going there," and he makes a beeline. Yeah, good for him. I wanted to say the other thing is I don't know if you noticed in the game, I actually saw a Leaf doing what the Florida team does. So, and the look on his face, I'm referring to Kachuk. Kachuk's in there, raising hell, when the whistle goes near the net, right? Raising hell, glove in the face, all that kind of stuff. And I'm watching, and all of a sudden I see this blue glove hit his cheek. And he turns and he looks and he goes, "What the heck was that?" He was shocked. He couldn't believe that a Leaf player punched him in the face. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the look in his face and the shock in his face. Kachuk is going, "Did one of those guys just punch me? What?" And the shock in his face. And then I looked at who it was and I followed the glove down the arm, up the shoulder, back of jersey 24.
Well, that worked out nicely.
I said earlier, and we've talked that the Leafs have to be restrained, but it was just a one quick punch right away to the face, like I've watched Florida players get away with, Bruin players get away with. We've seen it over the years, over and over again. I'll never forget the incident outside the door to the locker room, to the dressing room. John Tavares was punched by Mr. 6'6" defenseman a few times, and there was no penalty after the end of the period. So this kind of shocked me to see a Leaf do that. Reminds me of the Domi days. It really does. It reminds me of the days when the Leafs had Tiger Williams and such, right? They were the guys that you knew it was going to happen, and you knew that if a Leaf player got a punch in the face, there would be a very quick response. And he didn't get a penalty for it. I think they have to be careful with stuff like that, Aaron. But it was amusing. I was totally amused. I wish I should have froze the video and taken a picture of the look on Kachuk's face, the total shock. Like it was like, what the hell just happened? And I just loved it. I got to tell you, I loved it. For it to happen to a guy like that, I want to see that look on Marchand's face. That's what I want to see, that look on his face too. And
that would be absolutely heavenly.
Never mind Bennett. So yeah, moving on. Okay, so why should the Flames fans be rooting for the Leafs? I want to understand this. I know their GM is, and I know Tanev's a former Flame. What are the reasons?
So the Flames actually have Florida Panthers first round selection in the 2025 NHL draft. So if the Panthers don't advance to the Eastern Conference Final, that pick will slot in at number 22. If the defending Stanley Cup champions can rally past the Leafs, that would instead fall to somewhere between 29 and 32, depending on how much further they advance after that. So, as it currently stands, if I were Calgary, I would prefer it if the Maple Leafs didn't succeed. I would prefer it if the Panthers didn't succeed. And now this also, of course, goes back to the old adage that the team isn't in trouble until they lose a game on home ice. So Kachuk and the Panthers are going to try to prove that true because the best of 7 series obviously goes tonight. And we'll go again on Sunday, I believe, for games 3 and 4. Now, despite surrendering their own pick to the Canadiens as part of the Sean Monahan salary dump trade from 3 years ago, when Brad Treliving was still calling the shots in Calgary, the Flames are slated to select twice in the first round of this year's draft. They own New Jersey's at number 18, They could potentially end up with numbers 18 and 22, and they could potentially pluck a pair of pivots. So it's in their best interest to make sure that the Leafs finish ahead of them, so that they can get that.
They'll all be the team management with the Calgary Flames will be in front of their TV sets going, "Go Leafs, go, go Leafs, go."
It's unlikely, but if the Leafs do happen to make it, I'm pretty sure there will be one or two fist pumps behind the scenes.
I just can't see Calgary fans rooting for the Leafs. But what the heck? I've seen stranger things. I've seen stranger things. All right. We've got the Jets ranting. Boy, oh boy, this guy. I posted the fact that when he won the series for the Stars, I said, well, folks, you just got a chance to see why the Leafs thought it would be a good deal for them to trade Marner for him. He's a big body too, Aaron. He's a prototypical playoff scoring machine.
Yeah, and this is multiple hat trick games for this guy, which is awesome to see. Not awesome because it's against Winnipeg, but he had a natural hat trick in the span of less than 8 minutes. And basically he was there scoring in a 3-2 win over the Winnipeg Jets in game 1. He also had a third period hat trick, as we've mentioned before, in the Stars game 7 win over Colorado in the first round. I think this is going to cause a lot of problems for Colorado. Their original intent was to try to get him as far away from them as they possibly could, which is why they sent him to Carolina. And then Carolina just turned around and fed him right back into the West again. They're stuck playing against this guy. For the next at least 5 years, if not maybe even 10.
Probably more.
Hockey players bear chips on their shoulders.
Yeah, the thing of it is that he was a recognizable good player. He was a player that everybody knew was good in Colorado. He wasn't a player struggling that the team got rid of. He was a player that was a key component to that team winning the cup a couple of years earlier. Mm-hmm. So that trade happened, I think, because he didn't want to be there, Aaron, because if they wanted him to be there, if he wanted to be there, I cannot see how the team would have let him go unless there's something going on there, a little bit of that Vancouver Canuck BS that goes on sometimes, personalities clash. It doesn't make sense. This guy wasn't playing badly for the Avalanche, right? So there had to be something that had nothing to do with hockey that caused him to get traded, in my opinion. And the funny thing is they sent him to Carolina. Good riddance. We'll see you once a year. Other than that, don't know, don't care. And then Carolina makes a deal with Dallas. I can't even imagine what that head office in the Avalanche office is, what it was like in there. And then have to play against him and have him do what he did to them. He stuck it to him really well. But you know what, Aaron? We would have said that he played that well and scored that many goals and did so well because he was playing Colorado. But how do you explain now with what he's doing with Edmonton? Maybe he's just a good player.
I mean, you look at his stats, you look at his career statistics, and like had in 22-23 had 105 points, 23-24 had 104 points, had 92 points in 21-22, had 66 points in 2021 in the COVID shortened year. And then, only had 64 points in 49 games in the 24-25 season before getting traded. And this was a guy that was playing on a line with Nathan MacKinnon. You got to wonder if at some point was Nathan MacKinnon holding him back.
I think what you could say as well is that, and you could make the same point and be subtle, and that is that there was a, the old story of sometimes you need more than one puck on the ice.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right?
It can be difficult.
There's not enough puck time. So that's probably, I'll just say that. Let's talk about Draisaitl. I feel I feel Edmonton is a very lucky organization. Probably has the two best players in the National Hockey League, and probably two of the best players in playoff hockey. Now, I would say during the regular season, without doubt, Connor McDavid is the better player. But I would venture to suggest, rightly or wrongly, but it's just an opinion, that Draisaitl is a better playoff player. I would flip them.
I don't think you're necessarily wrong in that. Certainly, in this particular case here, with McDavid feeding Draisaitl, for those of you who managed to stay awake for the game, I unfortunately was not one of those. That goal that was scored at 15:20 when watching the replays was a thing of beauty. And as you mentioned, Frank, this is a position that Edmonton hasn't been in for many decades, and that's being up 2-0 and winning both games on the road. Evander Kane chipping in with the fourth goal was absolutely fantastic to see. Glad to see that he's back after all of the surgeries that he had. Darnell Nurse looks like an absolute weapon out there. That goal that he scored off the turnover in neutral ice there was just beautifully labeled. Arvidsson and Nugent Hopkins both had 2 assists. Calvin Pickard has been a revelation as well. I know that it looked like he tweaked his knee when Tomas Hertl fell on him, and that was scary. I was very concerned about that because knees and ankles don't necessarily bend that way, especially not in hockey equipment. Just very, very pleasantly surprised by everything that's happened with this one. Now, important to note, the Golden Knights' 42-game playoff winning streak when scoring at least 3 goals finally ended. It was the second longest in NHL history, next to Montreal's 52-game streak between 1945 and 1957. So,
now we talked about it a little bit, but you can cap this one off. I said my piece. The Golden Knights a little upset with the non-call.
Mm-hmm. No, and this is one of those things where you see it, it's a penalty. There does appear to be a player hurt. Again, it shouldn't take something like this for the NHL to protect its employees.
Well, like I said, it's not just a single. It's not it's not something that happens rarely. It's something that happens regularly, and it's happening every night. Every night there's something that one fan base or another have a legitimate complaint about. Let's talk about Tom Wilson, the S disturber. Buddy really, had a personal relationship with Canes in that game, which they ended up winning. And he ended up scoring the empty net goal to put the period at the end of the sentence.
Yeah, I mean, he had the primary assist on John Carlson's go-ahead goal on a power play early in the third period. He also put the puck into the empty net in the final minute to seal it. He was credited with 2 of Washington's 32 blocked shots. They had 22 more blocked shots than Carolina. He hitting, shoving right in the mix. At the end of the day, this guy, despite his regular season buffoonery and his predilection to be over the top, is a very solid hockey player and a very solid playoff performer.
He has the qualities of 2 hockey players. One that's a really good offensive player, and one that's an S disturber. And very rare that you have that good a tough player be that good and have the soft hands and the iron fists. It's just hard to believe that he has both those qualities in those 2 hands, but he does. And he's a great disturber. He distracts other teams to no end. The Canes are a team that like to take shots at the net, but the distraction of him being around kind of negates that kind of behavior and that kind of opportunity. So the Canes have to figure out how to make him a non-issue. But that's going to be hard, Aaron. The series is tied 1-1. Washington now will travel to Carolina. Carolina has home ice advantage.
Yep.
It's going to be an interesting series moving on. And Freddie Anderson, doing what he does best. He gets hot, and he's unbeatable when he gets hot. And he's been pretty hot.
He has been. The scores don't necessarily indicate exactly how important he has been to Carolina through the course of these playoffs. He did miss a large chunk of the first series. That wasn't ideal for Carolina, but then to have him come in and backstop them to wins, that's what they needed. At the end of the day, whoever's goalie is hotter is the one that's going to help them win. Right now, Thompson and Anderson are pretty evenly matched, but we'll see where it goes now that it's shifting back to Carolina.
Absolutely, Aaron. This was a thrill.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Totally enjoyable. We got to rush now and go see the pregame show.
Yep.
They'll show us. They'll talk about the officiating being not so good. I doubt it. One thing about Hockey Night in Canada, they don't like to fly in the face of the National Hockey League.
Well, it is what it is. I actually had a question for you, Frank, because I think we've got enough to do the full 60 if you wanted to.
You got a question for me? We'll go a little bit. If you got a question, is the question?
I was just going to say, based on how the Jets have been when it comes to their playoff series, do we think it's possible for them to right the boat?
Absolutely. The Vancouver Canucks were a team that did this, and they did the decline was persistent. The Winnipeg team is not like Vancouver. They are a team that can right itself. They did it this year. They hit a slump. I forget when it was. I think it was just before or just after Christmas. And then they righted the ship, and they looked like they were going to do that Vancouver thing, but nope. They got back up, and they the problem they have is that they raised the bar. They made it to first. And for some reason, finishing first is a curse in the National Hockey League. Not because I say so, but statistically, the evidence is out there that teams that win the President's Trophy, I think only once, and the Rangers, I think, were the team that did it, I think, that won a Stanley Cup. It's just not something that President's teams do for some reason. I don't know why, but that's kind of a simple little fact. But I have faith in Winnipeg. They need to do something that they're really good at, and that is be like a machine, be an offensive dynamo, and take advantage of the opportunities that are given them. They're a team that normally controls the play, Aaron, and they've had difficulty controlling play against their opponent, and that's been the biggest problem. They've got to figure out how to play, and the goaltending. They're going to go on the road, Aaron. So that's a problem for them. But they've been a pretty good team on the road. I think they and the Toronto Maple Leafs have been the two best teams on the road. So they can do it.
See, my concern here is between 1982 and 1988, when they lost the first game of each of those playoff series that they played, they got swept.
Right.
They didn't end up winning. In their that was their first go round as the Winnipeg Jets. In their second go round as the Winnipeg Jets in 2015, they lost to Anaheim and they got swept. In 2019, when St. Louis won the Cup, they lost the first game to St. Louis and ended up losing in 6 games. In 2020, they lost to Calgary in the first game and got swept. And in 2021, they lost to Montreal in the first game and then they got swept. So, this is one of those. I don't know if it's a curse, but it just seems like an unfortunate trend for them, where once they've lost that first game, it doesn't seem to work for them.
Well, I still have faith in them. The old Canada in me doesn't want to let go of them being able to do it. But I think that the key's going to be generating offense. And obviously backstopping the goaltending is going to be critical, and for some reason, don't know why, Connor looks ordinary in net, and part of one of the biggest reasons why they finished first isn't because Connor Hellebuck was ordinary in net.
No, that's very true. And I think this is one of those things where nobody's 100% sure exactly what happens to him in the playoffs.
And they're still missing their best defenseman, from which a lot of the offense emanates.
I mean, during the regular season this year, he had a .925 save percentage. You put him into the playoffs, and all of a sudden he's a .90. He's an .836 goaltender this playoffs.
It's a different.
Which is, I understand that it's 100% a different game, but in the 8 games that he started, he's got 4 wins and 4 losses, and that .836 save percentage and 3.75 goals against average is creeping up to 2023, 2024 levels when they lost in 5 games, and he was an .870 with 5.23 goals against. That's not good for anybody. And Comrie's don't get me wrong, Comrie's a backup. He's a good backup, but he's not the solution if they want to win. So
well,
Connor's got to figure it out.
When you throw numbers out, Aaron, let's also bear in mind that Wall was what, 885. I think he's holding an 885 goals against. That's not very good. But the point is that 885, you have to frame it in who they're playing against and how the Leaf offense is doing. At the end of the day, the goaltender's job, his only job, we can talk about shutouts, we can talk about making spectacular saves, but when you strip it all down, what's the goaltender's job? What is the goaltender's job? The goaltender's job is to make more saves than the guy on the other side, to make enough saves that the goals that your guys score are enough to score more than the other team. I live in the playoffs on the Grant Fuhr principle of goaltending. That's to me what it matters. Grant Fuhr had a ballooned goals against average by playoff winning standards, but that goals against average was a bit better than the opposition's goal against average. So that essentially is what has to happen with Hellebuck. His team's going to have, that's why I say it's important that they score. They have to insulate him, give him a chance to make a difference like he did in one of the games there, the game where they eliminated the opponent, where he got hot. They scored a lot of goals on him, but then towards the end of the game, they needed him to make a couple of saves and they needed to score a couple of goals. Both those things happened. Winnipeg made it to the next round. That's what they have to do in this series. The goaltending has to be good enough for the offense that the Winnipeg Jets can create. And they have an offense that they should be able to insulate their goaltender, Aaron. And that's what's going to have to happen.
Excellent. Well, I'm hoping they can pull it out because history is never kind to anybody. So, this whole trend that they have of losing series after losing the series opening game has to be something that they want to buck if they want to make sure that they can take Stanley home.
Well, now I want to talk about the Leafs one last time going out, since you're willing to hang around for a little while longer.
Mm-hmm.
What will the Leafs have to do to win this game? It's on the road, other than score first, because it doesn't matter where they are, Aaron. We want them to score first if we want to keep doing this show. So we know that. What, as well as the goal scoring first, do the Leafs have to do?
You have to take away the momentum of that fourth line. That fourth line that Florida has is basically playing like a second first line, and they can't be allowed to exploit the openings that they have. Marchand scored within 5 seconds of them taking a penalty and being on the power play after he got an opener.
That was I had a 10 for that dive.
Oh God, it was fantastic, wasn't it? That full spinorama that he did before he hit the ice, absolutely fantastic.
It wasn't smooth though, Aaron. He was tripped a little bit, and then he realized, oh, great opportunity to spin like a top.
Yeah, and that Florida has been allowing a lot of goals off the rush.
Yes,
You
and
know,
that's not normal for them.
no, not in the slightest. They're usually very good at clogging the neutral zone and stacking up across the blue line to prevent clean zone entries. The fact that Riley was able to score off the rush, and you know, the fact that players are able to pick up the puck and wheel through the middle of the ice is something that they've got to make sure that they clamp down on. But it's something that the Leafs need to make sure that they take advantage of. Penalty kill for the Maple Leafs and penalty power play both have to be better. I know it's a common thing, but it's got to happen. If they don't get better with that, then it's not going to win for them. And again, like I said, neutralizing that third line is what they have to do. They have to continue to take advantage of Bobrovsky too, because he is just not having a good time against the Maple Leafs. So they've got to keep working on that and banging on that.
Okay, so for me, the power play has to work because especially on the road, because it helps shut the crowd down. So that's what they want to do. They want to keep the crowd down. They want to make the crowd nervous, and then force the Florida team to do things that are out of character, and also chase the game. Florida, we've learned in this series so far, they're not really good at chasing the game, and the Leafs are quite capable of defending a 1-goal lead. That's something on the road that's going to be required.
Mm-hmm.
The other subtle thing that I'm going to add is they're going to have to stay away from too many men on the ice penalties. I say that because they're not the home team. You talked about the fourth line. The Leafs somehow are going to have to be prepared to react to the lines that are out there without doing it after a whistle. They're going to have to do it on the fly. And that's why my concern with, too many of the ice penalties. So, yeah, the lines, the coach is normally the one you say, well, he's the guy that's got to do the line stuff. Well, it's the players that have to execute it. One thing I've learned, another thing that I've learned quite strongly about the head coach, I've heard and people have said he's not an X's and O's guy. And I kind of agree with them. I think the X and O's guys are the guys behind him. Those are the X and O's guys. I think what he does better than any Leaf coach that I've seen, and I'm going to go back to three. I'll go to three. He's in a class with Burns, Quinn, and Nielsen, where the players will go through a wall for them. Right? That's what I remember with those coaches. The players had every faith in them. Now, Nielsen was a big X's and O's guy. He was Videotron. He was that guy, right? Burns was old school. And of course, we know Quinn was old school, right? And Burns was a cop as a living, and he marshaled the troops, right? So we've got a coach now here in Toronto that I think emulates those three, has the strong qualities of those three. I think was the strength, was them having the players believe in them. And the reason they believe in him, Aaron, is he doesn't panic and he gives good advice, emotional advice that is beneficial if you listen to him and don't go after somebody. Because when a guy like him who says, when you get the impression that team can't react to stuff that happens, and he's the one saying it, that's pretty strange to me. So that says something, and don't think those players don't recognize that. They know this is a guy who goes, you just stomped my goalie, I'm going to punch you in the face. And he's telling them, remain calm. And that's the biggest thing that he's been saying lately is remain calm. Everything he says is to keep the team calm, which he's had to do. They lost their number one goaltender. Boy, do you need to be calm. The reaction the next game when they realize he's actually out this game, and now they're going to they found out that he's going to be gone for the whole trip to Florida. Calmness is going to be the thing. And the calmer they are against calm and businesslike, that's what they're going to have to do tonight to beat Florida.
Perfect.
Is that it?
I think that's it, man.
Well, why don't you say goodbye to everybody?
Well, I can certainly do that. Hey, everybody. I'm Aaron Freeland. This is Frank Stanisci. Thank you for tuning in to Candid Live, Leaf Talk Edition. We are going to take off now. You can catch Candid Frank at Candid Frank 1030 at YouTube and on other social medias. And we'll see you on Monday.
I think we got a guy with a new